Hey, welcome to this vid. I thought I'd put one together the night before the exam. Paper 1 is tomorrow, and what I was planning on doing is just going through some common questions that I've come across in the last couple of days that either some students have asked me, or I've come across it on Twitter or on Facebook. Some common questions, and I thought I would go through them and just put your mind at rest, ready for tomorrow's paper. So firstly, one was, can you clarify what's on paper 1? Yes, well, paper 1 is the education paper, and you will get a 4 marker, a 6 marker, a 10 marker with an item, and a 30 marker solely on education, which could be on differential educational achievement based on class, gender or ethnicity, could be on educational policies, or it could be on theory of education or the role of education. Then there's a 20 mark methods in context, where you're asked to give strengths and weaknesses of a method applied to a specific context from education, and then you have got a 10 mark theory and method question at the end. So what was asked on this year's GCSE AS paper mean it won't be asked on the A level? Not at all. There's no link between the papers. They are seen as separate qualifications, so whatever was on the AS paper or the GCSE paper could well appear, those topics could appear on the full A level paper again, so they are not really a good indication for you to use, so I would take no notice. Can I bullet point my answer for a 4 and 6 mark questions? Well, not bullet points per se, but I would make sure that you answer in full sentences. Start each new point on a new line. So if it's asking for reasons, I would use words like the first reason is, and miss a line between each, so then the examiner can clearly see that you've got 3 points or 2 points, whether it's a 4 mark or a 6 mark question, but not bullet point. They've got to be full sentences. Just making sure that you are following that. Next one, on a 10 mark education with an item, can you use the item anywhere in your answer? Strictly yes, you can use the item anywhere, but I would recommend that you start with the item and then logically apply your knowledge to it, following a logical chain of reasoning, applying it to the links in the question, and making sure then your analysis or evaluation, because you can evaluate it in an item question, 10 marker, follows logically on as well, so it will just make your answer flow a little bit better. But they won't penalise you if it is not at the beginning or wherever. Okay. Next one, do I need to explicitly quote the item? I think it's good practice if you do. It avoids any clarification, but the examiner should be able to see what is in the item and see that you have used it, but it is good practice to say, according to the item, here it is. Bit of signposting will not hinder your answer. It will just make it really obvious to the examiner. Should I include a plan for the essay questions? Well, one of the trainings that I went on, it was recommended by one of the chief examiners that students that did plan their answers actually answered the questions better, and they were a lot more logical and they flowed better because the students had thought out their answer before they put pen to paper. So I would recommend that you do a little bit of a plan. You can do it on your exam paper if you don't cross it out and you mention some knowledge that you then didn't use in your answer, but it's on your plan. The examiner should be looking at that as well, because it's still technically on your paper. So I would think it's a really good idea, good practice to plan your answers. It will help you organise your thoughts, and it will avoid you writing about the wrong thing. You do see some students that you can clearly see that they've gone steaming ahead answering, and then after about 3/4 of a page then they cross it out because they've realised that they wrote about the wrong thing. Those sort of mishaps will not occur if you had planned your answer, so I would say it's very, very much good practice. Can I abbreviate in my answers? Well, some of the sample things that have come from AQA have used abbreviations. For example, writing out non-participant observation, it's quite long, and they have abbreviated that to non-PO. Just make sure that you write it in full first time. I have also seen students write working class abbreviated and middle class abbreviated, and it didn't seem to be a problem last year, but I would definitely say if you are abbreviating anything, please make sure that you write it in full the first time you use it, so then the examiner can see what you are actually abbreviating. I think that would be just good practice. If I cannot think of an evaluation point, and I'm presuming that is in an essay, what should I do? I know that you've been probably drilled into you need to make sure that you get the AO3, but if you can't think of a criticism, maybe try to think of some sort of analysis. So if you're making a point about educational policies, for example, well, if you're starting to think about the effect of the educational policy, try and compare it between different students, so middle class versus working class, or what about ethnic minority students, or does it have a different effect on boys versus girls? Any sort of analysis in that way will score you AO3 if you can't think of a direct criticism. Alternatively, if it's asking about differential educational achievement, and the question is asking you about internal factors, you can show analysis to say, well, how might that internal factor be influenced by an external factor? So for example, the way that teachers label their pupils is often based on the way that they speak, and speech and speak code is an external factor. So if you can show how things are linked together, that is analysis, and that will get you AO3. So if you can't think of an evaluation, try to break down the explanation a little bit and look at it from a different angle. That might get you AO3 marks in analysis rather than evaluation. On the methods in context, how much method should I have? So again, I'm just speaking from experience from marking last year's paper. Good answers had a good breadth of practical, ethical, theoretical method, and then they applied it to school and the context in the question, and they did well to apply it in the context of what the question was asking. Okay, so don't spend too much on just the method when you do mention the method. So for example, a strength of using, say, a questionnaire could be that they are fixed questions, so it's easy to replicate, which is useful in a school context because then you can print off 200 copies dead easy, and you can hand it out in tutor time on whatever given topic is the context of the question on. So whether it's parental attitudes or helping with homework, or whether it's on truancy or misbehaviour or pro-school, whatever the context is, then try to link it to that. So make sure you do have the bit of the method, practical, ethical, theoretical, but then apply it to the context in the question. Paper 1, will the 10-mark outline and explain the question 6 only be on a method like last year? It's a theory and methods question, so it could be on a method, but it could be on a theory, so functionalist, Marxist, postmodernist, etc. Or it could be on one of the debates, so it could be something to do with sociology and the science, or should sociology be value-free, value-laden or committed, or the influence of sociology on social policy. They could appear as a 10 marker as well. So just be aware that it could be on anything from theory and methods, and that's quite a big topic, so just be wary of that. Is there any evaluations for the 10-mark outline and explain? There is no evaluation marks. The AO3 is only for analysis. So if it's asking you for something like ethical problems of using covert observation, if you then identify an ethical problem and then say this could lead to further ethical problems, or they are willing to have ethical problems because it increases the validity of the research, or something like that, which logically follows on in form of analysis, then that will be okay, but not evaluation. Do I have to remember every sociologist's name? This is like the most common question that I have all the time. I can't remember everybody's names. It's not always about the names, it's about, do you have and are you able to give good explanations which are concept rich? Can you use the correct terminology to explain why middle class achieve better than working class? It's not always about the names. The names of the studies add to the AO1 knowledge, but it's not the be all and end all. If you've got good explanations, you will be rewarded for that. Make sure you've got the key concepts in there as well, and using the correct terminology. How much time should I spend on each question? So there's 80 marks and you have got 120 minutes. So you should be spending 1.5 minutes per mark. Okay, so breaking that down for the 4 and the 6 mark, that's how 4 and 6 mark is 10 marks. You should be spending 15 minutes on that. A 10 mark question you should be spending 15 minutes on. A 20 mark question you should be spending 30 minutes on, and a 30 mark question you should be spending 45 minutes on. Obviously, if you have extra time or you have timed rest breaks, you will need to make your adjustments based on whatever additional exam support that you have, but roughly spend as that amount of time. That gives you an indication about how much they're expecting you to be writing as well. Okay. So they were the common questions. Thank you for listening. If you have got any other further questions that I've not addressed in this vid, please pop them in the comments below and I'll try and get an answer to them as soon as possible. And good luck in paper 1 tomorrow. I'm sure that you have all planned really, really well and you will do great, and just make sure that you show off your knowledge. Tell the examiner what you know and link back to the question. Okay, thank you for listening. Have a great evening and I shall speak to you again soon.